A lesson of Sandy Hook err on the side of the victims. Newtown, Connecticut. Scarlett Lewis sees reminders of her son Jesse U, who died at age 6, with 19 classmates and 6 educators in the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting U in photographs on her refrigerator door, in portraits she painted of him from memory, and now, uncomfortably, in the Newtown Community Center, a soaring new complex. Built with a $15 million grant from General Electric, the employer of the father of the gunman who killed Jesse, the center will open this summer as an anchor meant to bring the community together. But to Ms. Lewis, and it's painful to see, Ms. Lewis said, because I know what I lost in order to pay for it. In the 6.5 years since the in American history, more than $100 million in federal, state, corporate and private money flowed into this community of about 28,000 in southwestern Connecticut. Although the title at the heart of the trouble was a question: should donations in the aftermath of tragedy go to the victims' families or be shared with the entire community? After the shooting in December 2012, a dispute over that question broke out between the United Way and the families of some victims, and scars from that battle fed anger about the community center. Adding to the tension, merchandise arrived by the truckload, including 60,000 teddy bears and more bicycles than Newtown has children. So many flower. Whether you have direct involvement in the tragedy or not, you're hurting, and you're going to have anger, said Robbie Parker, whose 6-year-old daughter, Emily, died at Sandy Hook. If you throw money, the families embraced acts directly memorializing their loved ones. Firefighters and virtually all of the relatives of the 26 who died established foundations or public service endeavors in their loved ones' memory. We really are grateful for the love and support we received, Ms. Lewis said. But Newtown remains a lesson in the unintended consequences of well-intended generosity. Part of its legacy, the American people have an incredible charitable impulse, said Kenneth Feinberg, who administered the victim compensation funds after the September 11, 2001, attacks and volunteered to adjudicate in Newtown. But nobody knows disbursement disputes. Our hearts are broken today, for the parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers of these little children, and for the families of the adults that were lost, President Barack Obama, struggling to maintain his composure, said in a televised statement hours after the shooting. He has called it that same day December 14, 2012 the United Way of Western Connecticut, which as an established nonprofit was able to immediately receive tax-deductible contributions, worked with Newtown Savings Bank to create the Sandy Hook School Support Fund. A United Way knew the families were warned early on that there could be trouble. In the first days, they were right. Kim Morgan, Mr. Parker, Emily's father, was not happy. The United Way granted, there's an argument that community services have to be really heightened after something like this. I agree with that. Ms. Morgan, who still leads the United Way of Western Connecticut, declined to comment beyond saying that we continue to be concerned and have compassion for everyone affected by this terrible tragedy. By March 2013, the United Way had collected more than $10 million and created the Newtown Sandy Hook Community Foundation, putting a board of 5 community leaders in charge of distributing the money. But the United Way, I don't want to paint anyone in a bad or negative picture, said one board member, Monsignor Robert Weiss. The foundation scrutinized the thousands of donor notes and emails that came with the money to try to determine the donor's intent, and by April reached a decision. $7.7 million would go to the families of the 26 victims, to 2 wounded educators and to 12 families of surviving children who were in classrooms where children and educators were killed. The remaining the outcome did not satisfy all of the families, and Mr. Feinberg was brought in to arbitrate. Controversy raged. The next month, the Connecticut Attorney General released a letter saying the United Way's decision to designate $7.7 million for victims' families did not legally violate the donor's intent. But he criticized it was an abuse of the goodwill of Americans and the international community who thought that when they were giving to the families. Nelba Marquez Green, whose daughter Anna Grace died at Sandy Hook, said in an interview. "I don't know anyone." Reflections on charity. By November 2013, with the wounds from the United Way fight still fresh, its $15 million gift to Newtown to build a central meeting space for the whole community. The company, then with its headquarters in neighboring Fairfield, Connecticut, employed many Newtown residents, and had sent a team of GE executives to Newtown after the massacre to support overwhelmed town officials. But among some do you know what it feels like to drive by a $15 million center-built Indiana Honor of 1214 for the community when so many people are going without support? Ms. Marquez Green, Pat Ladra, who was Newtown's first selectman on the day of the shooting, stood in her Sandy Hook kitchen recently, reflecting on the role of charity in promoting healing in Newtown. "My heart is very much with the community center," Ms. Ladra said, adding that most in Newtown agree. But in 2013, Ms. Ladra acknowledged many missteps, a few redos and doubts, she said. "But this was balanced. Sandy Hook families have done that, channeling money given to them into efforts to save others from the fate that befell their children, siblings, and spouses." Ms. Lewis wrote of the Anna Grace Project, founded by Ms. Marquez Green, offers emotional learning and violence prevention programs for children through school partnerships, training for teachers, music, and arts program support. Mr. Feinberg said Sandy Hook was among the most painful of any mediation he has witnessed. "In public meeting, there were no villains," Mr. Feinberg said, emphasizing that he understood the United Way's desire to help all Newtown residents. "But we err on the side." Mr. Feinberg said that, while every tragedy is different, lesson 1 from Sandy Hook is for the authorities, you the mayor, the city council or the governor, you to swiftly establish a single nonprofit benefiting victims and their families, so money intended for them is not atomized, or given to charities that lack the experience or ability to distribute it to them. How many people who watch reports on TV about the death of these kids send a check to the United Way, as opposed to helping out these families? He said. All the money should go. In 2013, Newtown's struggle over the United Way funds to the marathon bombing, Mr. Feinberg said. One fund Boston. After the in 2016 in Orlando, Florida, Mr. Feinberg said, he and Camille Byros, his associate, persuaded the organizers of 4 fundraising efforts to consolidate them into a single fund benefiting the victims and their families. After the in Parkland, Florida, the Broward Education Foundation, which supports Broward County Public Schools, dedicated solely to victims. The campaign raised. Parkland students designated a separate GoFundMe effort to support their March on Washington for gun safety legislation, stipulating that any leftover funds would go to victims and their families. It's unfortunate that we were the lesson learned, Ms. Marquez Green said. I am just grateful.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.